So recycling. Now we know what to recycle, what things not to recycle. Let's look a little bit deeper. So we have the 3R philosophy, and the 3R philosophy is something you need to make sure you know. They will ask you what it is, and all it stands for is reduce, reuse, recycle. So just write down this top part of the notes. The 3R philosophy means to reduce, reuse, recycle. And if we are going to reduce, reuse, recycle, that means we need to start to buy more materials made from recycled items, start recycling the material or the items that we have, reusing things like the water bottle I have, I reuse. And the reason we need to do that is to save energy and resources. So reduce, reuse, reuse is what 3Rs stand for. Moving on. Reduce. So what does it mean to reduce? If we are reducing, then we are reducing the amount of non-renewable resource things that we use. So you can just write down the stuff that I underline. You do need to be aware of examples. So if these examples make sense to you, fine. If not, then you can jot down a couple more. But reducing the amount of non-renewable resources we use, or just the amount of resources in general that we use. We can do that by having containers that can be refilled, like Tupperware or my water bottle. We can reduce the amount of waste we have. So sometimes people, they just throw away all the leftovers in their fridge. We'll start eating those leftovers, and that will cause you to reduce the waste you have. If possible, by packaging that can be recycled. So if you know something is going to be sold in a recyclable container, then you can reduce your trash that way. If you get a lot of junk mail or stuff like that, then you call those places and say, please stop, take me off your mailing list, and that will save the amount of stuff you're having to throw away. And you can also start a vegetable garden. If you grow your own vegetables, you're reducing the amount of resources you're having to buy when you go to the store. But the biggest way is going to be to reduce by reusing the stuff that you have. So let's move on. That was reduce. Now let's look at more examples. Donate your clothes. So I hope y'all don't do this, but some people, when they have clothes they don't want to wear anymore, they throw them away. Take them to Goodwill or Salvation Army. There's plenty of people who would love to use them and to wear them that can't afford other things, but you're just throwing them away. So donate your clothes. Eat your leftovers. Meal prep. I meal prep a lot, and that prevents the amount of food that I have to throw away because I know exactly what meals I'm eating on what day. So I know what to buy. That way I'm not buying food at the grocery store and wasting money that I don't need. Purchase things made from recycled products, or these bags up here that you can buy pretty much anywhere. Instead of having to use plastic grocery bags, you can reduce how many of those you're using by bringing these to the store. I have a few of these. I shop at Aldi a lot, and I leave them in the back seat of my car. So every time I go to the store, I can just grab one, and then I don't have to worry about plastic bags. And you can even start a compost pile. Okay, reuse. So to reuse means to put into service again. That's what you need to write down. How can you reuse? Well, wash dishes. Okay, a lot of people just will think it's a lot easier just to have a paper plate. But think about the amount of resources you're using up if you buy paper plates for everything. So wash your dishes, and that way you can reuse them instead of having to buy a new paper plate every time. Reuse your containers. If you go to Doug's grandma's house or our house after their Thanksgiving, and you open up our refrigerator, it's going to be filled with butter bins and Cool Whip containers and sour cream containers and stuff like that. But what's in them is stuffing and turkey and all sorts of wonderful, wonderful things. So you can actually reuse those containers as Tupperware containers rather than going out and buying more stuff. Then you'll just have 5 butter bins, and you open it and you don't know, is it going to be butter? Is it going to be potatoes? Is it going to be stuffing? But that's just fun, part of the fun mystery. So reuse your containers. You can reuse storage bags as well. If I know that I'm going to bring like crackers to school multiple days, I will reuse that same little Ziploc bag because all that's going in there are crackers. So sometimes you can reuse things like that. Just be on the lookout. You've got reusable razors rather than disposable. And this is something that's actually a really good thing to do. You can turn old t-shirts into rags. So t-shirts that are so old that they shouldn't really be donated because they're so worn, you can cut them up, and they make really good dust cloths because they don't leave behind a lot of lint. They're also really good with Windex cleaning the windows because, again, they don't have a lot of lint. So you can do, and it reduces the amount of paper towels you use. So that is to reuse. Let's keep going. The Cool Whip container, that's what I was talking about earlier. And then my Nalgene bottle. If you drink a lot of water, I strongly recommend you getting a water bottle of some kind that can be washed and reused rather than having to get a new water bottle every single day or multiple times a day. Recycle. We're not going to watch the video, but what it means to recycle is to turn waste material into something that can be used again. So you're actually taking the material and making it into something else. Like if I recycle water bottles, the plastic from that water bottles, that's what the waste material is. It can then be turned into something else, such as a ski jacket or oil or plastic, or not oil, but plastic, other water bottles, stuff like that. Make sure you always properly dispose of your recyclables. Now that we've had our intro, you know how to do this. You know what can and what cannot be. Because remember, if you are lazy and you do not recycle your recyclables correctly, or you start putting a bunch of greasy trash things in your recycle bin, you're contaminating your recyclables, and now they can't be recycled. So you've just kind of messed everything up. And then recycling saves energy from fossil fuels, and it reduces waste in landfills. We've already kind of talked about that. If you did not write this down earlier, make sure that you have that written down too. But recycling is a big deal because it will save energy and save space in landfills. So I'll give y'all just a second if you are writing, and then we will just keep on going. We've already talked about the facts on this slide, but I'm going to let you pause the video to watch the video on plastics so that you can just get an idea of all the plastics that aren't being recycled that go into landfills or are just thrown somewhere and get washed into the ocean. You can get an idea of just how much plastic is out there. So in 1 second, I'm going to let you pause it, but here's a picture to give you an idea as well. Remember when people thought the solution to pollution was dilution, and there's still a lot of countries that do this. They dump all their waste into the ocean. They don't have landfills. They just dump everything in the ocean. When that happens, this is the buildup you get. And a lot of this pollution is in international waters where it's not the responsibility of one country. And so you can see the turtle that's trapped in the net. You can see the bird who has consumed so much plastic from eating just things around the ocean that once it died, they cut open the stomach, and that's what was within it. You can see the boat. You can even see the water. And then you can see all the plastics that get washed up on the shore. So go ahead and pause this video and play the plastics video. Okay. So now we're going to look at something called an ecological footprint. And you just need to write down everything that's on this slide, or you can summarize based on what you're hearing me say. So what is an ecological footprint? It's simply the measure of human demand on the Earth's ecosystems, aka the amount of resources that you're using. So every single one of you have an ecological footprint. Your footprint is something you leave behind. Think about if you're walking on the beach, then every step you take is leaving a footprint, a mark, and you can see where you have gone and what you've done because of that. Well, that's what your ecological footprint is showing. How many resources have you used? How many fossil fuels have you used? How many trees have you caused to be cut down? So it's simply looking at what is the demand, I guess, you've been putting on the earth based on how you're living, based on things you're buying, based on what you're recycling, what you're throwing away. So it's going to track the amount of land and water area that you use as a person within your lifetime. So if you are always throwing things away and you are not recycling, then you have a large ecological footprint, meaning you've put a large demand or a large strain on the earth. And the larger the footprint, the worse the footprint is. That means that you're making a huge mess before you leave, rather than making a small indent. Nature has had to provide a lot for you, rather than you kind of respecting and kind of coexisting. So if you recycle, you reduce your footprint. And I would write something like that down. How do you reduce your footprint? That's your goal. You can do that by recycling. You can do that by carpooling. If you're carpooling, then that saves another car from being on the road, so you're using less oil and gas and less pollution. If you are building things that cause you to clear a lot of land, a lot of deforestation, you're making your footprint bigger. So how could you prevent deforestation even if you're not cutting stuff down? Recycle paper. So anytime you're conserving energy, turning lights off when you leave a room, conserving water with shorter showers, all of that type of thing makes your footprint smaller. So in life, you want to have the smallest footprint possible, and you get that by conserving your resources, by reduce, reuse, recycle, and that's your ecological footprint. So hopefully you are done writing that down. We are going to keep on going and look at a carbon footprint. A carbon footprint is simply the amount of carbon that you use within your lifetime or produce. So your ecological footprint was just talking about all sorts of resources. The amount of water, land, plastic, oil, fossil fuels, all that stuff. This is just looking at the amount of carbon you're producing. Now, breathing isn't going to be something that's going to make you have a big carbon footprint. It's more the amount of energy you're using. So to reduce a carbon footprint, you've got to reduce the amount of CO2 you're producing. And the main way we produce CO2 outside of breathing, because again, that's just a natural thing, is by using energy because of fossil fuels. Every time you burn a fossil fuel, you are causing more CO2 to be put in the atmosphere. So if you are driving less, or you are, like say, you live close to the gym. Well, instead of driving there, ride your bike or walk there. A bus is a big way of carpooling to save, everybody from being on the road. To turn lights off, like say it's daytime and you don't really need the light on, you can just let the windows naturally light your room. That will reduce your carbon footprint because you're reducing the amount of fossil fuels. So anything where you're reducing energy is going to reduce your carbon footprint. So let's keep going. Footprints and biodiversity. The footprint provides an example of the amount of pressure you're putting on the ecosystem. So it's an indicator of the pressure on the ecosystem. That's why the bigger the footprint, the worse, because you're putting more pressure within it, because the earth is having to provide more and more and more and more and more for you, when it's also having to do that for everybody, because everybody has a big footprint, then we start to get in trouble. Because the earth has a limited amount of space, it has a limited amount of resources. So the smaller the footprint, the less pressure. So just make sure you have something about that written down. So don't write that whole thing, but footprints are indicators of pressure on the ecosystem. And moving on. Do we fit on the planet? No, we don't. Technically, you do fit, but humanity uses 1.5 planets which doesn't make sense. So we only have how many Earths? One. We have one Earth, and yet we are using the amount of resources it would take to have on 1.5 Earths. And that doesn't make sense. That's not going to work out well in the end. That would be like if you know you can spend $10 a day in order to make sure you have enough money for the whole year, and instead you're spending $15 a day. Well, you can keep that up for a little while, but then one day you're going to run out of resources, and that's when a lot of people just go in debt. But we can't just go in debt to the earth. There's no planet that is loaning us anything to make that up. So it takes the earth 1.5 years to regenerate what we use in 1 year. Again, Just like with the money, we can keep this up for a little bit, but we cannot keep this up forever. It will catch up with us. The amount of space we're taking up in landfills, it will catch up with us. So just make sure you're doing things to reduce your footprint, carbon footprint, ecological footprint. Easiest way by reduce, reuse, recycle. So the gist of this slide was just we're using more resources than what the earth has. So as long as you wrote down something equivalent to that, we use more resources than what the earth has. And I will say that one more time in case there's somebody that wanted to jot that down. We use more resources than what the earth has. And just like debt, it will catch up with you. And then we'll all die. Just kidding. But it will catch up to us and cause some really big issues. Next. The future. You don't have to write this down. But if we keep having the same consumption patterns as we've been having, keep this trend up, then that means by the 2030s, we will need 2 Earths to support us instead of 1.5. So that really this slide is just saying instead of getting better, we are getting worse. And some of that has to do with the growing population. Some of that has to do with the fact that people still aren't doing the 3R philosophy. They still aren't reducing, reusing, and recycling. The only way we can get it back down and allow the earth to recover, because it can, is if we start to reduce what we're using and notice that homes and energy, so what we personally are doing at home is what is causing the biggest part of this issue. And with food, because we waste so much food. To inform others, if there is time left in class, if there's at least 20 to 30 minutes left, then we are going to do this poster. So if there's 20 to 30 minutes left in class, then I want you to make a poster. And this poster can be on a Google Doc, or sometimes people do like Google Drawing or something like that, or they'll just do like a PowerPoint slide. But before you get that out, just pay attention to instructions. So in a moment, you will get out your computer and you'll create a poster that can inform other people of the need and the importance of recycling. Here's some example posters. So the poster should include how and why one part of the 3R philosophy is important. So maybe you talk about reduce, maybe you talk about reuse, maybe you talk about recycle, but you only need to talk about one. Remember, an effective poster, so a good poster, is one that can easily be read. Nobody's going to read a paragraph on a poster, okay? People want to be able to glance at it, catch their attention, and then be able to read some quote or something. And then if you have more detailed information after your quote has intrigued them, they can then go and read the smaller font that's around it. So you should have pictures and stuff like that. And again, you can make it in Google Drive and then share it with me. So if there's 20 to 30 minutes left in class, then this is what we're going to work on for the rest of class. When you're done, share your poster with me, and you will get a classwork grade for that. Okay, so I will let y'all in the video while you work on your poster.